You talked about the choice at the election. What is the choice as you see it?
How strong our economy is will determine the country we live in for the next 10 years. So a stronger economy means a stronger future. And so how well you manage the economy is going to determine the choices that Australians have over the next decade. Why does that matter? If you've got a strong economy, you can pay for the pension, you can pay for Defence Forces, you can pay for aged care, you can pay for all of the essentials that Australians rely on, Medicare, all of these things. If you can't manage the economy and manage a budget, you can't do that. Now our government and I, as Treasurer and as Prime Minister, working with Josh Frydenberg, we've ensured that our economy is one of the strongest economies in the world, despite the pandemic, despite the natural disasters. Outstrips the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, and the list goes on. The alternative is a Labor Party that haven't got that track record. And what we're going to face over the next 10 years, I'd like to tell you that all of these other challenges will go away. They won't. It's going to be a tough next 10 years. It's going to be a tough next 3 years. And you need a government that knows how to keep our economy in good, strong shape. Not just talks about it, one that's actually done it.
Labor says that they've got the same policy on national defence. They say that they'll be economically like Hawke and Howard. Yeah. Obviously, you disagree. But what is it about their economic policy or an idea that particularly you think we need to start talking about because it is a fork in the road?
Well, you know, I could say I could surf like Kelly Slater, but that doesn't mean I can. And I can assure you I don't and can't. And Labor can say that they would have the same defence policy as us, but what I know is that when they were in government, they took defence spending down to 1.57% of the size of our economy, the lowest level since before the Second World War. And so just what we know what that means, if we'd kept defence spending as a share of our economy at the same level that we inherited from Labor, there would have been $55 billion less spent in our defence forces over the last 8 years. There would have been $10 billion less spent this year alone. So that's what I call not just a gap, I call that a yawning chasm between the Labor Party and the Liberals and Nationals, I should say Labor and the Greens, who want to basically end defence spending as far as I can tell, and where a Liberal Nationals government will continue. So just because they say it, I'm not pretending to be anyone else. We're still wearing the same glasses. And, sadly, the same suits. And I weigh about the same, and I don't mind a bit of Italian cake either. So I'm happy in my own skin. I'm not pretending to be anyone else. And when you're Prime Minister, you can't pretend to be anyone else. You've got to know who you are, because if you don't know who you are, then how on earth are other people going to know? And I think that's what the choice is at this election. You know, not everybody agrees with everything, every call I've made over the last 3.5 years. That's the lot of any Prime Minister. But I think Australians know that I've been the one who's stood up for Australia in some of the most significant challenges we've faced, whether it's standing up in our own region for our freedoms here in this part of the world, or standing up to the big tech companies. And Lucy Wicks is here tonight. She's handing down a very important report tomorrow on standing up to those big tech companies on the terrible things that happen to our young people in particular, but women especially as well, on social media. And I want to really congratulate Lucy Wicks for the great job she's done.
And last one before we'll get our first question up. I think Glenn's going to be our first in a second, but my last question before I hand it over to people way more important than me. It's been a crappy couple of years. I know you can't promise that there won't be another pandemic, that there won't be all of the other things that have rocked us. But how do we get back to normal? How do we return to the joint that we all desperately want it to be?
Have you heard that phrase about build back better? Labor's calling it build back stronger. I got a real problem with this because it sounds good, doesn't it? But actually, the philosophy that sits behind it is actually, it really troubles me. It says there was something wrong with Australia before the pandemic. I think Australia has always been an amazing place. But we're a nation that has a business-led economy, that doesn't want government in the centre of your lives, telling you what to do. Frankly, we've had enough of governments telling us what to do for the last couple of years. No time to move on from all of that. But the way you get things back, I think, to where they were is you grow your economy back. Once small business people are back in their businesses and determining their own future, once Australians no longer have to be as dependent on income support, which thankfully they aren't now. We've got unemployment down to 4.2%. It's an amazing statistic. It's going to an unemployment rate with a 3 in front of it. There are 1 million more women in work today than when we first came to government, and we've got Australians in jobs. So, when we've got our businesses back running their businesses and our economy strong, as it's continued to be strong and build up again, then that's what enables us to get back to where we want to get back to. And that's why I'm for business-led growth. I don't see the pandemic as an opportunity to invite government into your lives for the rest of eternity. But our opponents think like that. And I know that is a view of other countries that have a similar way of thinking to the Labor Party. But here, we believe in business-led growth and letting people get back in charge of their lives.